Alright, draft physics video. Another Daftloday. You know, it's there's no specific arguments, just this general statement. We are quite convinced they have the right answer, even though he specifically argues in videos and demonstrates how the really smart physicists know that Einstein's relativity is incompatible fundamentally with quantum mechanics, and one of those two things will have to be changed, or both of them. So even though he concedes that point, he is so confident that all the evidence points to them both being perfectly correct and entirely true. And nobody can have any sort of negative opinion in terms of saying something like, the evidence is weak, and if you think about it in a different way, you can actually unify all the forces and create one kind of mechanics, not two different kinds of mechanics. It's just so it's an irrational argument he's making.
Measured in all circumstances here on Earth, okay?
Now we're going to make corrections to this silly equation. Then it turns out that formula is wrong. Now, as Cousin Venus emphasized in the first lecture in this series, yeah, well, that's part of your problem, is that you don't know when you have a rubbish idea.
Now, what you don't understand is, if you want to say you've found a new law, or a new theory of physics, you know...
Yes, it's a new theory of physics, that's right. It's not a... well, I mean, it'll convert into laws, I suppose, but some of them, I mean, laws that are more rational, like you can't give light two momentums.
This stuff has been going on for 100 years or more, this really high-level development of theoretical physics. And
so again, an argument from high-level development, and the high-level people he is overtly and aggressively arguing, they're all convinced that relativity is wrong. These are videos he's posted, these are statements he's made, and now he's going to defend relativity as the most proven in thousands of experiments, and they all point to this being the truth.
There are literally thousands upon thousands of phenomena all been measured and agree with this orthodox theory of general relativity and quantum mechanics.
There you go. So, so the very thing he says the highbrow physicists know doesn't work, he's saying is so proven nobody can argue with it. I mean, the duplicity of this bullshit.
What you don't understand is that if you want to say that you found something that explains all that you have to show that your mathematics is either exactly the same, or...
Well, I have shown that there's nothing wrong with the inverse square law, so that's a good little piece of math. And I have shown that my mathematics will be different in the sense that I won't change the distance of the slit, and I won't change the wavelength of the light. What I'll do is change the fundamental causes. As I've already stated this, sine theta will still be in the formula. It'll be the same formula. There'll be a different cause for the effect. You still don't understand. This is about describing causes. It's not about describing effects. Except in the theoretical realm of what happens when something's going half the speed of light and meets something else going half the speed of light.
Sure that it's exactly the same in all circumstances, except make some predictions where it's slightly...
So again, I've already made predictions. I've predicted that it will be found that lensing is a misunderstanding of phenomenon, okay? That it doesn't happen the way they think it happens, that gravity waves are not produced the way they say they're produced, that all this stuff will be found to be bullshit. I mean, what other... I'm predicting that I will demonstrate that the two-slitic phenomenon is not being caused by Huygens or Heisenberg. It's being caused by a simple mechanism of the interaction with more electrons and the fact that charge changes the configuration of those electrons. And that's why there is no gradual... that's why their formula is inaccurate. That's why it doesn't describe the phenomenon. Again, you can't show me a single YouTube video doing the math correctly. Not one.
Predicts something different, yeah? And you have zero quantitative way for...
So again, I'm the 0 one when I'm pointing out how you're the ones that have no quality or quantity to your evidence. The evidence of your the lensing is clear, that you haven't even thought about the consequences of it being true and all the things that you aren't seeing that you should be seeing. So every time the phenomenon doesn't match, you just ignore it, okay? And you overemphasize the match, as I've pointed out with the whole wave theory, the whole idea of comparing light waves to water waves, and how in the single slit experiment there's no match. In the double slit experiment there's not much of a match. In the multi-slit experiment there's no match again. And yet you say you have conclusive evidence. Young's experiment is the nail in the coffin evidence. Blah, 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 blah. Preposterous exaggeration of the weight of your evidence. Your weight has no mass.
To measure your hypotheses. Yeah? It breaks. Your hypotheses break.
It's not a hypothesis alone. It's a model. Okay? And the model doesn't break. So that's just more rhetoric out of your mouth that you're not demonstrating with an actual argument. Show me where it breaks. I'm pleading with you to rationally cognize your accusation of breakage. You haven't demonstrated it with a fact. You haven't demonstrated with an experiment. Go ahead, demonstrate what experiment my theory can't account for. What fact it doesn't account for.
God knows how many fundamental pillars of science, like conservation of momentum, is broken.
Okay, that's a lie. We've dealt with this subject. There's no fucking breaking of anything called conservation law. Not a single conservation law is broken. It's just a fucking lie. I mean, prove it. Demonstrate it. Show me the experiment. Where does my theory break conservation of momentum? Where? You lying piece of shit.
If light leaves, can't be shot through a hole in the spaceship, so to speak. Yeah,
again, so again, can't be shot through a hole in the spaceship, so to speak. Somehow that it violates conservation of momentum for me to argue that a photon travels in a straight line in the direction in which it was released. That violates conservation of momentum somehow, when of course it doesn't. They're the ones violating conservation laws by creating fake rules that say photons don't travel the way they were shot. That they automatically redirect their line of sight or something into the future. They go to the future.
So when I use the word, it means that the quantitative number, that is the amount of mass times its velocity, yeah, that number doesn't change in the universe.
Well, again, where have you any evidence that I somehow made the light go faster or I somehow changed its mass? So again, show that. Where did that happen, you lying piece of shit? See, he's saying he has evidence from his speed of light. He's done experiments apparently where he moved matter, a laser beam, half the speed of light, and he's done the experiment. He's proven that it breaks conservation of momentum if the laser beam actually shoots straight, perpendicular across the spaceship. Somehow that violates conservation of momentum. He has proof of it somehow, and he has no such proof.
And if you start ejecting particles of light without ejecting a piece of that, you end up with it somehow keeping the same momentum but dwindling the mass away. Yeah.
Again, nowhere have I ever suggested a photon does anything but go forever at the same exact mass forever. It moves perpetually, forever. All you can do is trap it in circles. You can trap it in all kinds of shapes, actually. You can trap it. You can't stop it, you can't slow it down, and you can't reduce its mass. Ever. That's what my theory says. Now you can lie about what I've said, you can lie about what my theory says, but that's all you have is lies. I mean, I can't stop you from being a compulsive fucking liar. I mean, so until you come up with some evidence where my theory says something different than what I just said, that a photon never stops, is forever, never goes slower, never runs out of power, never does any of these silly things you're saying somehow my theory implies. It doesn't imply it. It doesn't say it. It doesn't indicate it. There's no evidence whatsoever that that has a single thing to do with my theory. You lying sack of fucking shit.
It's not conservative. I've made this point on comments and...
You've made no point. Where did you make this fucking point? The point doesn't fucking exist, you lying sack of shit.
Video replies before, and it never gets adequately answered.
You didn't make it. There's no point. Somebody show me the point, please. Show me this Daftloday point where I've somehow, my theory violates conservation laws by establishing that photons never lose mass, never change speed, and never stop. How does that violate conservation?
That certain laws may not apply as widely as they often did. In this case, C1 is perfectly correct to C miles an hour, but it is not. It's not true in any sense of that, of using the word there's no real velocity change.
So again, he's still talking about the velocity. We haven't gotten anywhere through this video, actually. You know, it's supposed to be about gravitational waves, and we still haven't got to the part where he's defending Einstein's relativity, which he misparaphrased to say that somehow in 1916 Einstein said something about gravitational waves when he didn't.
There's only you words in the real, right? What is real is a different philosophical debate.
Okay, so now he's changing the way he's saying something actually doing a velocity is being philosophical. Claiming that it's kind of silly to say something's violating a law when it doesn't fucking exist. See, I'm saying how can something that doesn't exist violate a law? How is that possible? That a non-existent thing violates laws? Shit.
This is a model for making measurements and predicting what the velocity scanner will say in different situations. Yeah? And it's a useful model.
Okay, again, this crap of an irrational justification. That's all I can say. You can't rationalize the non-existent thing violating a law. It doesn't exist. The velocity being calculated is not a real thing in the real universe moving a velocity. To call it that and establish that that's what it is so you can fix it with a fake solution, that's just bullshit. There's nothing else I can say. It's not even a good magic trick. It's an overt cheat. You're fucking cheating reality by sticking things in it that don't exist in it, and then claiming I fixed reality by taking the thing, the silly thing you put in it, out. It was never in it. It didn't need to have it extracted. It doesn't have two appendixes. You don't have to go in and take out the second appendix. It's a figment of your imagination, the second appendix. It doesn't fucking exist. You're not a hero because I took it out with my magic powers. I went and pulled out the second appendix that never fucking existed.
And in as far as that, it always works. It has a measure of truth about it.
Okay, it always works. It always works to create a fake problem and fix it. That always works to make you a hero. Yes, that's a super way to be a hero, is to have a fake problem and fix the fake problem. Yes. But it's not decent. It's not rational. It's not respectable. It's not a fucking argument, douche.
Nothing's velocity. Nothing has that velocity. It's not a real...
Didn't you just say this about 8 times?
Yeah, that's right. I said it about 8 times because he said about 8 times that the goddamn thing was real. And that's just nonsense. So that's why I did it. He's premising his defense. His argument for the theory of relativity is the creation of a fake problem. So yeah, it needs to be pointed out, asshole. And you still don't seem to understand it. You still won't even admit that's exactly what he did. So I guess I can repeat it more and more times because dumbasses like you will sit there and keep pretending that's not exactly what the fuck he did.
Already, anyhow. So this doesn't really constitute added weight to this argument. It's just merely repetitive repeating of your dogma.
So he says it's a dogma. My clear accusation that nothing travels that speed, that clear accusation, instead of countering it and showing how something actually does travel it, did he do that? No. He just claims that somehow it's a dogma to point out when something doesn't exist that somebody else is claiming exists and claim that there's absolutely no evidence that anything exists. There's no way you can contrive the existence of that added velocity. nothing's going that speed. It is a fact. Nothing is traveling that speed. That is a fucking goddamn fact. There's nothing wrong with that sentence. Nothing in the real universe is traveling that fake speed. That's a fact. And instead of responding to that statement and claiming, no, that's not a fact, I have evidence of something that is traveling that speed. Well, you didn't do any of that. You're just claiming that it's a dogma to point out a fact.
You're just talking about a V in terms of perception. Perception isn't identifying accurately what the reality is.
Measurement, yeah?
It's not measurement. You didn't measure anything. Sorry, that didn't happen. There was no measurement of a thing's velocity. It didn't happen. You fakely calculated it, adding two things and saying there's a third thing going the speed of the two things. There's no third thing going that speed. Another factual statement. There is no third V thing going that speed. It doesn't exist. It has no reality. That's a fact.
How do you perceive without measuring? Yeah? Our whole existence and science is founded upon measuring.
Well, as he pointed out earlier in the video, how do you perceive without measuring? I have a radar gun. I get the wrong answer. Obviously, your measurements have to be done carefully. If you can't do them carefully, then you're going to get the wrong answer. And when you add up two things and assume that those two things become a third new thing, that's retarded. Okay, if there's two people walking down the sidewalk and you calculate how they're walking and then you create a third person walking their speed, calculated added speed, that's retarded. That's not measuring this person's speed and this person's speed. That's making up some fake third speed that some fake third thing is traveling. No third thing is traveling that speed. That's a fact, again, that you have no counter argument to except to call it a dogma.
And being able to carry out the same measurement, yeah, that I can give you a criteria and you can make the same experiment, yeah, to verify my experiment.
There's no experiment. There's no experiment. There's no experiment that creates something going that speed. Nothing ever travels that speed. Fact. Nothing ever travels that speed. Fact. Nothing ever travels that speed. Fact. There's no experiment that makes something travel that speed. You're just full of shit.
Because I see the incoming car moving, I'm moving 60 miles an hour, he's moving 60 miles an hour towards me. Because I see it as a fast event, a faster event, a 120 mile an hour event, doesn't mean his car is going faster or my car is going faster.
So directs us to the paper, the many papers, research, directs us to your paper refuting some of the papers, yeah, about the measuring the constancy of the speed of light. Yeah, because I know you have a constant speed of light, but as a measurable thing within your theory, it varies.
Where does he get that? Where does he get that the speed of light varies in my theory? I emphatically say it. I write it in bold print, actually. This is the rule. And still he says, somewhere in my theory it says it. No, it doesn't say it anywhere. There's no variability to the speed of light. Ever, 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 ever. I mean, it's just amazing how this fucking cunt can get away with this shit. I mean, there should be a law against this kind of disgusting lying.
Yeah, it varies between, let's think, 0. Yeah, if you could be at speed of light and measure it, you measure 0. And if you was going...
So again, he's talking about measuring it inaccurately again. So he's again talking about, I point the radar gun at it and it says 60 miles an hour, even though we know factually the car is only going 30. So again, he's saying somehow the perceived speed is the real speed. The real speeds are phony, fake things that we shouldn't take into account. So we should ignore what it's really traveling, what its speedometer on the car says, and we should go with the wrong answer, which is the radar gun, the perceiver. The perceiver is always right. The reality is always wrong. Fuck.
Head on, you'd measure twice the speed of light.
Again, you wouldn't bother measuring it as speed, you'd measure it as force. But regardless, what you're measuring isn't accurate. There is no thing going the two combined speeds. Nothing travels it. Not the fender, not a headlight, not a single item on the car travels the combined fucking speed. No real thing in the real universe travels the fake speed. It's a fact. There, I've said it 37 times now. And you still assert a different truth, and yet you don't explain how you can do that rationally. How can you rationally assert that something is actually traveling the combined speed when you provide zero evidence of anything ever doing it?
So those are the theoretical extremes. I know you say, Matthew.
Okay, theoretical extremes, again, of bad measuring. So again, we're back to clock arguments. He thinks the clocks are right. So he thinks the clocks telling wrong time are somehow telling real time, and real time is getting warped. This is like, I can't help you, okay? If you're stupid, you're stupid.
Doesn't exist at various points, but the point is you would have a moving measure on the speed of light.
Okay, so the speed of light wouldn't change anything at all. The speed of light, your misperception of the speed of events has nothing to do with the reality. Again, the train coming towards me, all right, changing the sound that's coming off of it, the pressure wave, I don't get to change it by moving the same speed as the train. I didn't change the pressure wave by moving. What I changed is how I'm perceiving it. I took something that was compressed and I re-expanded it by my movement. Nothing changed for the fucking sound wave. The sound wave was compressed. Period. I uncompressed it. But it traveled the whole distance compressed until it got to what I was doing, until I perverted it. Its reality isn't what I perceive. The reality is what the train made.
Sorry about the artifacts. But all they did was put v1 plus v2 instead we have v1 times v2 divided by the speed of light squared and a 1. So this will be a tiny number that you add to 1, okay, to make this number not be allowed to get, well, this one's
So what are you doing?
not to allow it to get too high. So this, you want this number to get higher, so this number stays smaller. And
You want? What do you mean you want?
That's what they did it for, you idiot. They contrived this for the simple purpose to limit this. This can't go to the speed of light because you put the speed of light squared here divided into these two things multiplied times each other. That means this regulator keeps getting bigger as soon as this number gets bigger. So this cancels out any growth in this expansion. This expansion can't go above the C here because of this regulator. It's a governor. It stops it from ever going to C.
Want for what?
you need it to get higher at this accelerated rate.
What do you mean? I need it to get higher at this accelerated
It, I said. I didn't say I. So another pile of crap.
rate. No.
Yes, this number accelerates. It goes higher, faster than this goes higher to stop this from getting to C.
In the limit, yeah, at low speeds, this term becomes negligible. Okay, the fraction becomes negligible.
Yes, duh, exactly. It becomes bigger as the speed gets bigger. You have to subtract less to stop it from going over the speed of light, obviously. Obviously, this gets bigger proportional to the size of this getting bigger. Duh, exactly what I stated. For the single purpose to stop this from ever going over the speed of light.
And so V1 plus V2 over 1 is essentially just V1 over V2.
I mean, I explained this in the video, so it's just amazing that he plays this game.
All right? The whole denominator is a waste of time, a waste of space. Yeah, it boils down to the regular old V equals V1 plus V2. Right? All this needing.
Okay, no, it doesn't boil down to that. That's the whole point. This is relativity, idiot. This is a contrived mechanism to stop this from going to the speed of light. And that's all it is a mathematical contrivance. It has a function. And its function is to limit how high this number can go.
And this, that, and the other, and what needing this to accelerate, and it's just crap. It's just talking out your ass.
All right, so he's saying relativity is talking out of your ass, because that's exactly what the guy was saying. This is relativity now, idiot. So now it's this or relativity. This is consistent with the speed of light because v can never exceed the speed of light. So he's basically mocking Einstein's relativity theory, because that's it right there.
Now you want this number to get higher, so this number stays smaller, and you need it to get higher.
No, what are you talking about? At the speed of light, this fraction term becomes sizable, right? But
look, the point, I said it in the video, so I shouldn't say it again. But the point is to put two synthetic numbers in here. Put in 0.6 of the speed of light and 0.6 of the speed of light. Now that would add up to over the speed of light, right? 1.2. So you can't have that. This factor ends up by multiplying these two and dividing by the square. This number is 1 plus, so obviously this denominator expands, gets bigger than 1, okay, by how those numbers multiply. And obviously if this is 0.6 of the speed of light and this is 0.6 of the speed of light, this is going to be an awful big number now, where before it was a little number.
And that will make, in this formula, for all things relative, it will make it smaller. But there's no needing.
Again, it's the whole purpose is to make it compatible with relativity. It's the whole purpose of it. It's relativity. It's the speed limit formula, dumbass.
At this accelerated rate.
And there's no acceleration there at all. These are constant velocities, right?
The acceleration is in the size of this number. This number gets proportionally larger as these numbers increase because it has to subtract much more. The faster the two v's are, the more you have to subtract from them. The more you have to divide into them. You have to have a bigger and bigger number to divide into them. You have to cut a bigger percentage of their speed off. You have to kill their speed. See, this turns out, say if this was 0.6 of the speed of light and this was 0.6 of the speed of light, this equation is basically going to say we're going to force these two things below this 0.6. So now it's going to be 0.4, 0.9 and 0.4, 0.9. It's going to reduce them so this v can't exceed the speed of light. It's going to pretend they're not going the speed they're going. We're supposed to pretend because that's what relativity and your silly frame crap means, is we don't know actual speeds, we're just having pretend speeds. It doesn't matter what the speedometer says your car is going, because if somebody's watching you, they can say, no, you're not doing that.
Special relativity does not deal with acceleration at all. This is your stupidity.
Again, it's the acceleration in this denominator, idiot. It's the acceleration in the size of the number you're dividing into the frickin' number to reduce it. That acceleration. I'm not talking about material acceleration. I'm talking about an acceleration in the size of this number, asshole. It gets bigger, like by the inverse square law. Okay? Further away you go, it gets bigger. Stupid fuck.
And you're not understanding the things that you think, because you wave your finger about and tap the screen, that you're actually making sense. And other people who are...
No, I'm actually making sense because I followed what the guy was actually saying, which apparently you didn't even watch the video you posted. Because he clearly pointed out that, look, we went from this equation, okay, to this equation. This is the Einstein improvement. And you're not getting it. This is relativity, idiot.
As mathematically educated, might be fooled into thinking that you're talking some coherent sense here, and you're not.
By multiplying these, you accelerate the rate at which this tiny decimal point number, see the c squared into the tiny number.
Yeah, there's no acceleration of rate of anything. Yeah.
So again, I'll say it again. c squared is a gigantic number. This number has to get pretty big, okay, for you to actually have a game. So the game is that when you get this to half the speed of light, obviously multiplying half the speed of light times half the speed of light gets you a real number, and so then you start getting 1 plus 1 equals 2, that kind of stuff. And then you start dividing this by 2, and you end up cutting these velocities in half. That's how dramatic it will get as those numbers increase.
It's when V1 and V2 close to the speed of light, then this fraction term adds to the 1, and it becomes a different formula.
It always adds to the 1, so there's no if. This is a positive. It's always more than 1. And it's just a matter of how big that extra bit added to the 1 is. And when these numbers are half the speed of light, this fraction becomes a 1. And you cut the velocities in half.
So it's going to be a 0.000 addition at low speeds, and at higher speeds this number will go up more rapidly. So
at high speeds, it's of consequence.
When you have big numbers here approaching the speed of light, you can see that if this was the speed of light and this was the speed of light, that would be the same as c squared. Okay, so that would be c squared over c squared, and it would be 1 plus 1, which is 2. So you radically reduce this number, v, because you'd essentially be cutting it in half. So you'd essentially eliminate one of the v's.
Right, so
yeah, so I did explain it in the video. So I shouldn't have to make this argument at all.
Without the bullshit in the middle, you do understand the formula, yeah? But so what? This is just an explanation of a simple formula.
A simple formula. No, this is relativity, a contrivance, a mechanism to regulate it artificially. There's no real things doing this combined velocity in the first place, and certainly none of this bullshit is anything but a theoretical statement. You're just saying, I think it exists. I think this happens. There's a governor that stops things from going this speed. That's what you're saying. A mathematical governor. A contrived increase, a 1 plus. You create a fake governor to stop something from going someplace and then say, my formula is describing the reality. When your formula was made up to create the reality.
This equation, if they were both going near the speed of light, you'd essentially kill one of them because you're multiplying.
You kill one of them. You know, there's no killing of one of them. It's a consequence of.
Yeah, if the V1 and the V2 are the same speed, it's the same thing. Because this, if this is 2, it's just dividing it in half, which means you're just basically, your V here is going to be the same as V1. That's all it's going to be. You might as well just forget about V2 existing. Shit. Another truth. Another fact.
The formula. Yeah? This is just a loaded word you want to put in there to make it sound like there's something incredulous being claimed here. It's just...
No, there's something stupid being claimed here. That this is reality. When it's just a made-up pile of garbage. It's a contrived, virtual, synthetic. It has nothing to do with writing a formula dealing with real relationships that exist. They're just your theoretical relationships. And then you're claiming because the formula matches your theoretically made-up relationship that somehow that's evidence. I mean, it is circular as can be.
It's the model. It's the consequence of assuming that...
It's the model. It's not a model. It's a contrivance.
The speed of light is the same measure, and this is how it works out by virtue of concrete geometrical analysis. Yeah, Pythagoras theorem, high school mathematics.
Yeah, so again, just keep citing something completely irrelevant. This has nothing to do with Pythagoras theory or any of this kind of crap. This merely has to do with contriving a mechanism to govern this, like a wire being attached. As this moves up, this moves up. As this moves up, this moves up. It's just a way of creating a catch so the number can't exceed the speed of light. Completely contrived.
By half. You're multiplying by 2, so you just...
Hello, yay. What's all this just business? Yeah? You're not just doing anything, you're not wanting anything, you're not needing something to get accelerated. It's just the model. Yeah? And it's a quantitative model, and it's qualitative in the explanation is the speed of light.
Okay, so again, it's the model. It's just a theoretical gimmick, quite clearly, to prevent something from going the speed of light, to validate a theory that says things can't go the speed of light. So he's just validating a contrivance, and all for what? To stop a non-existing thing from going the speed of light. This thing doesn't fucking even exist.
Right? And the basic intuition of basic additive velocities is breaking down.
Killing one of them, and you're left with one left over, so the speed stays below the speed of light. So they prove it's just a rig.
What are you talking about? It's a model. It's what's proposed and what's been confirmed and never been falsified.
Okay, right. So it's been confirmed. So they have a theory that light can't travel faster than the speed of, that nothing material can travel faster than the speed of light, and they create a fake velocity of some kind, and then they create a fake trap to prevent it from going faster than the speed of light, and then they say the model proves the theory, when the model was completely contrived to do that. And there were no facts involved. No cars, no things moving, no experiments, no fucking anything. Just theoretical babble.
Right. Yeah? So, again, after all that showing how clever you are, pointing and tapping the fingers, yeah, you just come up with the ultimate liar, pants on fire argument, right?
Well, I came up with the argument that you can't contrive evidence and call it good evidence. Can I say that? You can't draw a picture of a gun, put it on the witness table and say, there's the gun, see? No, it's a drawing of a gun. It's not the gun. It's not evidence.
They can put some limit on where the formula can go. But it has nothing to do with anything real.
Well, it's based on real geometry.
Okay, so there it goes. Real geometry. Where does geometry come into this at all? There's nothing geometric in that formula. So what are you talking about? There's no sine thetas. There's no pi. There's no geometry there.
And real assumptions. Yeah? There's nobody conspiring to make this formula.
No, exactly. It's completely conspired. It's completely contrived. There's no evidence to do it. There's no cause to do it except to validate their own theoretical presumptions.
And the premises that support it have never been falsified.
And so he says it again. It's never been falsified. I don't understand. How do I falsify a contrivance? How do I prove that nothing's going the fake speed? That there's no nothing going the non-existent speed? How do I prove that except saying, show me the thing going that fake speed? I don't know how else I can disprove your theory but to force you to provide one shred of evidence defending it. A shred of evidence.
It has nothing to do with what your experience is going to be. Trust me, if you're only half the speed of light, it's
Trust me argument.
It's a manner of speaking, idiot. So it's when you're done saying, well, look, there's no evidence for it. It's just theoretically made up. So you might just say, hey, trust me on this one. There's nothing here. There's nothing. There's no dots to connect. Nothing.
Knock down an argument if ever I heard one.
Well, it's obviously not the argument. I'm making the argument with the statement. Trust me, there's no evidence of any of this. Because there's no evidence of any of this. Trust me. I will say it again even. Trust me. There's no evidence. I've pleaded for the evidence. I've looked for the evidence. I've done everything I can to attract the evidence. And yet the evidence doesn't show up. It doesn't exist. Nothing's traveling that third V.
Half the speed of light. You're going to see it happening a little faster than the speed of light.
All right, well, Einstein, throw it all away. Everybody, universities, lecturers, throw all those books away. Trust Gary here.
And his alternative is this fake notion that somehow your perception won't be consistent. So as things start going faster, you will start not seeing it more and more unlike its real self. And that's satisfactory to them. Seeing it wrong more dramatically, is what they think the truth is.
If you can perceive something happening that fast, I mean, it's ludicrous for me to talk about something moving that fast because it's past you before you can even see it happening.
Wow. Technical argument. So, a little half-hour analysis.
No, it's sort of an important argument in the sense that you keep talking as if you have been there and done that, like you have seen any of this take place, that you have any kind of real evidence of any of this nonsense. So I think it is important to now and then point out that no, none of us has witnessed car crashes at the speed of fucking light. For fuck's sake.
I just wanted to go over that formula, just how cool this is. It might be an hour long.
I mean, you can never see it anyway. You couldn't see an event happening that fast if somebody threw a rock from the moon at the speed of light.
What's your point? Speed of light's very fast. Yeah.
Yeah, no, my point is your preposterous arrogance. That's the point. The point is, Einstein's relativity theory is not substantially evidence-proven. The evidence is circumstantial. As pointed out, his prediction regarding Mercury, that one real scientists argue about the fact that it really just has to do with moving the center of the sun's gravity. So it's not really some sort of special thing. It's understandable that Newton didn't understand that gravity was a nuclear force, for fuck's sake, when Newton didn't even have any kind of standard model of the atom. So let's cut Newton a little bit of a break that he might not have anticipated that. And then you go on to the lensing of light, and I pointed out the huge flaws in the evidence, and you're just pretending, no, it's all rock solid. I mean, that's just rock solid. It's demonstrated. It's proven. You can't doubt that the light's bent by gravity. I mean, you're the one that's obnoxious in your dogma. Your unproven, unevidenced dogma.
You can't just watch it with your eyes. We all know that. And nobody's tried to go, oh, I'm going to blink really fast. Oh, this is amazing. I can see those stars and galaxies.
Yeah. And so the whole argument is about what you're measuring with then. And what's the stability of the thing you're measuring with. And that's the whole point about these atomic clocks being off. Because of velocity. You think velocity is for free. That you can move matter of velocity and the matter doesn't even care. Nothing actually happens to it. It doesn't have to absorb any force to move a velocity. It just has to be moved and it will keep moving forever. There's no degrade or change in the function of the atoms inside of that piece of matter for moving velocity. So you think it's free. So, and I'm arguing that no, that's exactly what degrades your clocks. That's exactly what makes them incapable of telling accurate time, is the velocity. So it's nothing to do with relativity or bending time. It has to do with the fact that it's intrinsic to the property of velocity that it will degrade the function of material objects. They'll become very bad rulers. They'll become bad clocks. Because their metabolism is going to change. Their atomic metabolism. A simple explanation. You don't have to bend the whole universe or warp it to explain why there's a connection between how well a clock works and how fast it's moving.
By the way, go on, blink really fast.
It's going to hit you before you even had a chance to look at it.
No, sophisticated apparatus is how we make these measurements. No.
Okay, sophisticated apparatus that he says is impervious to these effects. So again, the argument, he thinks the clocks don't break. He when you move them. He thinks the satellites in space are telling a real time, and the ones on Earth are telling a real time. That both of them are right. No, both of them are wrong.
No, believe me, think about it, how fast it is. It's like faster than my finger, Oh, believe me, you'll never see it disappearing into you can't see it. How you do it? Oh, it's all rubbish, because light goes, way faster, believe me.
As a premise of my argument, I was arguing the capacity to, let's agree for the sake of the argument that it can be accurately measured. So again, I wasn't claiming that our perception is going to be with our eyes. I was making the argument that we can't see it with our eyes. We'd have to slow it down to be able to see it. So what's the use of this nonsense argument? I'm just pointing out that you're claiming as if the evidence is right before our eyes, that the evidence is as solid as this pill bottle. It's not. You don't have hard evidence.
What might have even
plans, it reduces the old law of inline slope, and is compatible with the other law of nature, when results the bear. Yes, with a gimmick, a mathematical gimmick.
So he said we solved the paradox, and I pointed out you didn't solve anything. You solved a fake problem with a contrivance.
That's all that is, a gimmick.
It's a formula derived from the assumptions. It's not a trick. Yeah?
It wasn't derived from the assumptions. It was derived for the explicit purpose of meeting the assumptions, of creating the assumption. The assumption is, don't let it go faster than the speed of light. How do you stop it? You put in something in the denominator that's a governor that will prevent it. That's all it is.
logic applied to those statements. And that's what you get.
It has nothing to do with let's find the truth. Because this, in the first place, had nothing to do with the truth. So now, not to 150% light speed, it is magnet, with in fact yet 26% light speed. Directly above the radar. Right, so we have things going 75% of the speed of light, 75%.
So 75% of the speed of light, 75% of the speed of light, and it becomes 96% of the speed of light as the final V. So 75 plus 75, instead of equaling 150, only equals 96, because this number gets huge and it cuts this number in pieces. So we just pretend that this isn't going 75% of the speed of light anymore. It's somehow, the combined is, so you add, split 96 in half, and that's what, 48? So they're all going, they're going 40, 48? Something like that. So they went from 75% of the speed of light to 48% of the speed of light.
Of the speed of light, so you should have 150% of the speed. You should have 150% of the speed of light, and I thought, but we limited it to 96% with a gimmick. And this is good physics. We just make a gimmick because we think there's a paradox. We think that
No. If you want to call everybody liars, yeah?
You're a liar, okay? Trixie isn't a liar. Okay, he believes in his religion, and so he's just playing his little game with his God theory and just pointing out how no, it all makes sense. I mean, see, God put the dinosaur skeletons in the ground to test us. You see, he wanted to see if we would fall for the devil's evolution theory, and so it's just a test. They weren't really dinosaurs. They're just put there to test your faith. You see. That's all, and that's all this equation is. It's just a contrived explanation, okay, to justify a dogma.
And then go debunk the actual experiments which have been done to prove.
Okay, point to the actual experiments that demonstrate any of this crap in any kind of decisive manner, any kind of straightforward experiment. And let's understand that these are the physicists who can't accurately describe what happens in the two-slit experiment. They can't accurately describe what happens in a beam splitter. And yet they can do these incredibly complex experiments with tons and tons of engineered complex things and tell us that we know this photon and we detected it 15 meters away, the same exact photon. And we're just supposed to believe them, because what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to take all that technology apart and point out how they're full of shit?
From the constant speed of light. Yeah? Even the redshifted light, you know, it can be measured the speed of light of it, I think, and you know, it's not because it's redshift, it's not going slower.
Who claimed it was going slower? Not me. So again, another fake accusation. You know, the light doesn't go slower. If you create more distance the light has to travel, it will take longer to get to you. That's a fact. So, can't get around that, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I've had enough. This is ridiculous. The thing is, you recognise is when dissident science provides no content, but he's blissfully unaware that there's no rigour in his analysis.
Whatever. I wouldn't even use that word for this, but whatever. There's rigor mortis in yours. There's brain dead all over what you're saying, asshole. I mean, it's just brain-dead bullshit for you to defend any of what you said here, and for you not to even realize that it was using the formula to defend relativity. I mean, you're brain-dead.
In his own analysis of orthodox science.
Let's see, where are we? 49, yeah, too far along, I guess, to start the other video, I think. I mean, I could do 10 minutes of it, but I don't know if that's worth the trouble. Well, we can see how it starts anyway. We'll just see what he does with the beginning of it. Let's see. Analysis. So this is part 1 of 2. Oh, he still hasn't posted the part 2, I guess. How exciting. That this is going to be a long, tedious thing, I think. But we'll see. We're not going to indulge in this bullshit. His arguments are so bad.
Let's finish this game off again. I'll try to. Let's
sure.
announce the death of DraftScience.
Yeah, right.
Let's put the nails in the coffin.
Yes, right. Another 2 slip.
Let's explain why.
More bullshit from bullshitters. How they've nailed some coffin somewhere with, you know, the weakest evidence imaginable.
DraftScience will never be taken seriously and will always be understood as DraftScience.
Yes, okay. You will be eating those words if you live long enough, asswipe. They'll be, you know, just tattooed on you as this is what this asshole was. Just a naysaying, nitpicking, petty, resentful douche.
DraftScience has the idea that there are forces can be explained in terms of an aggregate sea of colliding fundamental particles.
Colliding again is probably the wrong word to use. As I pointed out, the forces never collide with the forces. They have to interact with a matter bit which absorbs them and reflects them perpendicularly or the way they came. But those are simple rules, and you wish to just ignore them.
And these fundamental particles are actually all there is. They all travel the speed of light. And it is true that you can get a notion of force from this principle. You can get a notion of several forces, as many forces as you want. If you
I don't think you can get as many as you want when there's only 2 polarizations. So it kind of limits your permutations. And as I've pointed out, gravity is dull magnetism, and that's why it can't reveal the repulsive elements of the polarized force, because it can't manifest the reflective part.
Include a magical polarization type property.
Okay, a magical. So he calls it a magical property. Now, we all know that magnets are polarized. We all know that the Earth has poles. You know, we know the concept of polarization exists. We know light is polarized. Now, does he ever call it magical property when it's talked about in physics? Polarization of light? Does he call it magical? I mean, just how duplicitous can you be? I mean, this overt hypocrisy to sit there and say somehow I'm pulling some kind of fake concept into the mix, and I just put a fake concept in. No, the concept of polarization is a well-tested concept. It's not an illegitimate, it's not unicornish, it's not a crazy idea. No, it's an idea that permeates physics. Electrons, protons. I mean, this is an insane argument for you to make, to mock the idea of polarization as just something made up, that we don't see evidence of it almost on every level of physics. An amazing duplicity.
Selection property. It's magical so long as you give no mechanism to the selection process.
Again, so, you know, they don't have a mechanism to the selection process for light either, going through a polarized filter. So any place I find where they cite polarization to exist and for it to have the effect of magnetism, I'm allowed to say that's a fake idea, a fake notion, it doesn't exist because you haven't proven the exact mechanism of the polarization. Now I've given, you know, some theoretical point where I've used geometry as being probably relevant, or that they are shaped round and square or something like that, and that's how the filtering takes place. But again, it just doesn't matter because he doesn't care about the truth here. He just cares about playing this petty game. Obviously, it's a petty game. I mean, to mock the idea of polarization and the idea that the basic nature of polarization is to make things filterable. They call it a polarizing filter, for fuck's sake, when you put it in front of light. I mean, I have them here, but that's what they call it, because it filters it, you fuck. So he's saying the idea of a filter is not, I am not allowed to use the idea of something being filtered by polarization, based on polarization, because that's a foreign concept. It's unicorn. It has nothing to do with what we know physics to be. When it's exactly the opposite is the truth. It's a rock solid part of physics. I mean, you're just such a stinking sack of shit to play a game this dirty. I mean, you're just rancid shit. Ugh. Amazing. Let's see. So, Stephen Burrow. I confess, it took me 15 minutes of frustrated talking and going about it the wrong way, mainly because I wanted to continue the video but didn't want to accidentally see the answer. But suddenly the following statement seems true for me. If true, A has to be even. Oh, so we're playing little what, premises and conclusion games. So we're not going to talk about anything real again. Just more bullshit. A little playing A, B, C. If A is married and the B rule is only fat people are married, then, and if Joe is married, then Joe must be fat, or that's physics now. In other words, it has to be A or 3. I would never win any speed awards. I'm a really slow thinker, Justin. I am an Aspie like you, and agree with so much of what you said about your own Asperger's. One of your fairly old videos, especially about the, well, whatever. I really have so little patience for you people who are, I'm retarded and proud! Whatever. Particularly the lack of imagination or lack of flexibility trait, because like you, I have no shortage of imagination for some things, too bloody much imagination in some cases. But again, like you, I could never get in that typical mindset of most kids who would imagine they were soldiers or superheroes, etc., etc. It bored the crap out of me. So he never played King of the Hill or anything, I guess. So my preferred option was to literally walk around in circles every day, almost an entire school life, pretending to be busy. Really, I was just busy thinking, using my imagination like to think, but apparently we were wrong. Well, I don't know what this is, but anyway, apparently none of your or my inventions or creations or solutions, no matter how wild or wacky or useful, count as us having imagination. I don't know, all this psychobabble crap. Personally, I think the experts on Asperger's would be a lot more expert if they actually had it themselves. Another theoretical thing, like that third V, the existence of, let's turn asshole into Asperger. Yeah, so instead of I have to admit I'm an asshole, I'll just call myself an Asperger instead. Ah, shit. Yes, great puzzle. Can't help thinking I should have approached it with an actual method thought. Maybe that's why I am so slow thinking, because my brain has to go through a lot of seemingly random. So look, I don't want to be rude, asshole, Stephen Burrow, but you're posted this on a fucking video that says Death of DraftScience, bad methodology. He's not going to demonstrate any of that. He's certainly not going to create any death sentence for me. And you're posting a fucking complimentary, essentially, comment on this piece of shit video. Fuck you. Really. Fuck you. Yeah, into that, asshole.